Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're doing something a little different and honestly a lot more practical. We are putting the absolute heavyweights of AI to the ultimate test. We're looking at Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, but we are not using them to write marketing copy or, generate fun little poems. We are evaluating them side by side for daily, high-stakes IT support and DevOps workflows. If you're an SRE, a systems admin, or really just a person responsible for keeping the servers from catching fire, you already know AI is fundamentally changing how we work. But the differences between these specific models when you actually put them in production, they're massive.
Because here's the real question, right? Which of these AIs actually reduces your mean time to resolution, or MTTR? In IT support, picking an AI that hallucinates a fake command line argument or just completely misses the context in a massive log file, well, it isn't just a minor annoyance. It actively extends system outages. It burns your time. As one developer in our sources pointed out, treating AI like this magic easy button without the right setup is actually going to conspire against you. So, we need to know exactly which tool to reach for when the alarms start going off.
All right, here's our itinerary for today. First up, why your AI choice matters. Then we'll run through 3 tests: error logs, incident postmortems, and SQL and code generation. And finally, we'll give you our ultimate verdict. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Why your AI choice matters and how to avoid those nasty IT pitfalls.
Okay, so if you just let LLMs go wild, you're going to end up with what we call slop, basically brittle, unmaintainable code generated by a bot that wasn't actually tested. The whole goal here is reducing your MTTR, not increasing it because you have to debug the AI's mistakes. Plus, as one of our sources points out, AI agents introduce this lethal trifecta of security risks. Think about it. They have access to private data, they're exposed to untrusted external content, and they literally have the authority to act in your environment. Oh, and to make sure this is a totally fair fight today, we're evaluating the standard and free tiers. We want to see what is immediately accessible to your team without breaking the bank. Moving on to test 1. Error logs. We're looking at active debugging with Grafana Loki.
Check out this awesome real-world scenario we pulled from our sources. A developer had this totally inert Blazor server program. They took a massive Grafana Loki error log snippet and just dumped it straight into Claude Opus 4.7. And, well, Claude kind of got stuck. Even after several rounds of prompting, it just couldn't pinpoint the 404 error causing the issue. So frustrated, the developer pivoted over to ChatGPT 5.5 High.
And the difference in approach here is absolutely wild. ChatGPT didn't just sit there and passively read the text. It acted like a real engineer. It actively spun up the project, used command line tools like wget and curl to probe the server, confirmed the file wasn't being served, and eventually tracked down the exact missing setting in the project file. Claude, because it was acting purely as a passive chat assistant in this context, just failed to identify the issue entirely.
Now you might be wondering, what about Gemini? Well, our sources note that Gemini 3.1 Pro is actually exceptional if you have a massive swath of irregular data. Say you need to dump an entire gigabyte of undocumented NetScaler REST logs that traditional machine learning would just choke on. Gemini eats that for breakfast. But for active, step-by-step log troubleshooting where you need an AI to probe and actually test hypotheses, ChatGPT takes the clear win for immediate debugging.
All right, test 2. Postmortems. Synthesizing incident alerts.
The prompt parameters for this test are pretty straightforward, but they're incredibly demanding. We want the AI to synthesize raw, chaotic incident alerts, messy Slack channel logs, and the final resolution steps into a clean, structured postmortem summary. Basically, something your team can actually learn from without some poor engineer having to do all the manual data entry themselves.
And when it comes to writing and synthesizing like this, Claude Opus 4.7 is just unmatched. Reviewers consistently praise how strictly it follows instructions and its ability to keep a really natural, non-robotic tone across long documents. Gemini 3.1 Pro, on the other hand, really struggles with continuity here. It occasionally gets lost in the weeds, prunes important context, and requires you to frequently step in and course correct just to keep it on track.
Let's break down exactly why Claude is such a powerhouse for these critical documents. If we look at the GDP-Val benchmark for economically valuable tasks, GPT 5.2 occasionally hallucinates factual errors. It's about 2.22% of the time. Now, that might sound tiny, but when you're writing a post-mortem for upper management, you absolutely cannot afford a 2% chance of the AI inventing a fake server name or just making up a metric. Claude's strictness totally prevents those generic AI voice cliches and factual errors. It's the superior drafting tool, hands down.
Test 3. SQL and code generation.
To set the stage for this one, I want you to think about those incredibly subtle edge case errors that hit your ticketing queue and ruin your afternoon. One senior engineer from our sources described the classic nightmare scenario perfectly. They said, the code hides an exception behind an if-then-else that defaults to the most common state, which isn't caught until it breaks things for the 1% of users. An AI needs an immense amount of context to catch a logic trap that subtle when it's suggesting a SQL query or a code fix.
And here's the fascinating part. The environment around the AI is actually just as important as the model itself. Operating inside an agentic scaffold, Claude Code scores a massive 80.9% on the SWE bench. And that's all due to superior context management, smart tool use patterns, and built-in retry logic. If you just make raw API calls to the exact same model without that scaffolding, it completely lacks self-correction, which leads straight to syntax errors and brittle code.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that agent scaffolding matters way more than raw model weights right now. Claude Code is phenomenal at holding on to vast amounts of context to catch those 1% edge cases. Meanwhile, our sources do note that Gemini's new medium reasoning parameter is actually a brilliant sweet spot if you are generating SQL or data visualizations, because it balances speed and reasoning perfectly. But a quick warning, as one DevOps user found out the hard way, if you don't give the AI access to your real-time metrics, it's just going to give you generic advice like, hey, check database connectivity, when your real issue is that your connection pool just maxed out.
Section 5, the final verdict. Let's get to those practical recommendations.
Okay, based purely on practical use cases, here's how it all breaks down. For postmortems and heavy refactoring where context is king, Claude Opus 4.7 is your go-to. Its impact is super high because it prevents downstream errors. For active log probing and actually executing terminal steps, ChatGPT 5.5 is the undisputed champion of fast resolution. And definitely keep Gemini 3.1 Pro in your toolkit for ingesting massive, messy data repositories, especially when you need to be cost-effective.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this golden rule, and it comes straight from an IT professional in our sources. They said, focus less on Claude versus ChatGPT and more on the pipeline around them. You can have the absolute smartest frontier model in the world, but if you don't build the automated data extraction, the standardized schemas, and the proper scaffolding around it, the output is eventually just going to degrade into useless slop.
So here's the question you really need to be asking yourself and your team today. Are you just handing a basic chat box to your support staff and letting the AI run wild? Or are you actively building the proper guardrails, the terminal integrations, and the automated workflows to transform that AI into a true, reliable senior engineer? It's time to think critically about your deployment. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.